Tonight, we also celebrate one of our 2019 members whose schedule conflicted with our ceremony last year. As you all know, who've been joining us from year to year, every year, we're strengthened by the broad-ranging experience and expertise of our new members. And this year is especially true because considering the circumstances that have led us, like so many others, to turn to more technology to celebrate them in a virtual setting. You know, normally we would be, as I mentioned to some of y'all earlier, we would be congregating at a nice establishment, sometimes the country club, sometimes other places for banquet, mingling for about an hour, having drinks and hors d'oeuvres and enjoying ourselves and getting to know each other or meeting old friends. But tonight we're doing this virtually, and I think it'll be a grand experiment. So I guess I want to ask if everyone would please be patient as we, John Chamberlain, Matt Dozier, and I, and Kim Patterson did a run through where we were trying to make sure we understood exactly who was going to do what. And I believe that I'm going to be trying to spotlight our new inductees along the way as we move between slides and introductory comments. But first, tonight, to kick us off, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Wheeler, GIS analyst for the State of Arkansas Office of GIS. I asked that office if they could help us with some storytelling about what it's been like in the last several months doing all this data analysis and reporting with the governor's office and the Department of Health and our current situation with our pandemic. Jennifer comes to us from the Office of GIS, and she has a master's in GIS from the University of Central Arkansas and a master's in public administration from UALR. And I'd just like to welcome Jennifer to give us a few comments tonight, some stories about what it's been like from the front. Thank you, Jennifer. Hang on one second. Thank you very much. One second while I find you, and I'm going to spotlight you so we can see you big. Okay, please. Jennifer Wheeler, everyone.
Oh, no. Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. So, I spent some good time learning a little bit about you guys, going through all your videos and the bios of all your members and your inductees, and looking at some of the things that they've been doing. And I can honestly say that there wasn't one bio that I wasn't very, very impressed with. I'm very thrilled to be here, and amongst a very interesting group of people. Not only are so many of you just highly educated, but I know you've got to be super intelligent. And I'm just really proud to be an Arkansan, not just because of all the work that you guys have been doing, but the state as a whole, especially with the the governor's initiative on ensuring that computer science or computers are taught in schools. And so I'm really, really proud to be here. And so tonight, I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about what our office has been doing with the Department of Health for their COVID response. And initially, we were hoping that our director, Shelby Johnson, could give this discussion, because he was really the main reason that we got involved. And he was very excited about the content, and he really wanted to be here, but he couldn't because he had a thing scheduled months in advance. So he does send his regards, but he asked me to sort of tell our story, because he wanted to share it with y'all, and it's something that we've all learned a lot about ourselves, about our state, and we're just real happy to be part of it all, even though it's tough times. It really is, and I don't mean to sort of belittle that point, but it's really been a big learning experience for us. So our involvement can really be sort of broken into two sort of phases. The initial response, that would be just in March, and then our ongoing work that we've been doing with the Department of Health on supporting them in their COVID dashboard. So, and along with that, you know, I was sort of thinking, what sort of anecdotes could I add from my personal experience? I wouldn't consider myself a computer programmer or a coder. I would really consider myself maybe a super user. You know, I'm a GIS analyst. Really only learned about GIS not that long ago, just from my studies in public administration. I mostly come from a humanities, like political science and history background, but the overall theme is I've sort of had my education in GIS and just my involvement in working in data that I'd sort of like to tie into our experience working on this COVID response is that, you know, no matter how good your people are, how good your programmers and your engineers are, if there's not a constant and, you know, never ceasing, promise to support collaboration and coordination and communication, then any project that any sort of person involved in computers or computer science, any sort of project, isn't really served well. And that's something that, you know, I've worked with a lot of engineers, not just for the GIS office, but in my past with Altel and Axiom, we've worked with a lot of engineers. And so, and a lot of them, you know, they're not always into, collaborating and talking and communicating. And sometimes that's just the nature of, you know, what makes them good is that they're just lock themselves into their room and do their work. So, and, you know, it takes all sorts of people to make something work. And so the general like thread that I'd like to weave here in my discussion is that we've always, you know, got to keep the long goal in mind and talk to everyone and keep the communication open, collaborate, because it really does make things work better, all the way down from the user, which would be myself, to, you know, the leadership. We've all got to be on the same page. So our work, like I said, can be considered in two phases. But the first phase, was, you know, it started in March when the governor, you know, basically said, you know, state employees work from home, and we kind of thought, oh yeah, we can work from home. But then that's when Shelby realized that he should really reach out to the health department because through our past work with them, we knew that they didn't really have a GIS person. I know they have, you know, mapping abilities, but they didn't really have a GIS person. And we knew that after observing some of the other states and things that they've been doing, you know, with their dashboards, that we might be able to help out. And so, you know, starting early, he reached out. He does it. Shelby does really well. And he reached out to the health department. He said, "Hey, I think we can help. Can we come down and see what's going on?" And so he was down at the health department's emergency operations center pretty much every day, you know, for at least a month or two, I think. And, you know, this is when we weren't really sure, you know, is this just gonna end soon? Sort of like, you know, our work last year on the river flooding. You know, we were down at their emergency operations center, and we kind of knew that would end, but we weren't really sure, you know, how this was going. And so he was just, I think it was really a moment for him to just sit in that room and listen to everyone talk about all the things that they need to figure out what they needed to do. And the first problem to solve was, how can we help the Department of Health and the National Guard, who was assisting, figure out who is in need of PPE. That was the first main, you know, concern. Who's needing masks and gowns? And for the most part, the health department uses a system called Ibm Resources, run by Javari, that I'm sure a lot of you know about. And it's basically a table-based, you know, database. And, you know, if you go into the emergency operations center and they had screens up, and it was mostly just, you know, tables of hospitals that said they have adequate PPE or they are, you know, they need more. And he realized right away that if we can get into that resource, the Ibm Resources, we could put that on a map for them and make it a real quick visual indicator of what areas of the state might need help, and that might make it easier and more efficient for them to deliver PPE. So we work so closely with mostly the National Guard on a lot of internal databases that haven't been shared publicly because they contain a lot of sensitive information, where each hospital is entering in how many patients they have, how many are on ventilators, do they have enough masks, do they have enough gowns, and so we worked with them on that, and that was at first it was even though at first I thought, oh, I get to work from home, I realized that when it was all over that part, that I'd actually worked harder and more hours than ever before I'd gone to the office, because it took us a while to sort of automate our connection with EM Resources API. So Shelby and I were basically doing a manual, update twice a day with EM Resources and our maps and apps and dashboards to give our programmers and our coders the time to really work things out. And that also sort of gave us time to figure out some of the problems that were in the database. There were several hospitals that didn't have the right address or the right Latin long, and so we were able to identify those errors before the data was really being relied upon by other folks. So finally, our programmers were able to get connected to the API, and those dashboards are still up and running. But I think I don't know that they're being used a whole lot right now with the health department. They've sort of they've gotten their groove with how to follow those those criteria. So the second phase, and it's like the main phase, the main part that we're doing, sort of the longer term work, is with the COVID dashboard. And so if you go to the Arkansas Department of Health website and you click on the map link, that runs to the dashboard that we've been working with the health department. And the main gentleman at the health department we've been working with, his name is Donald McCormick. And I really think that you're going to hear his name in the future. He is a brilliant person, young guy. He's working on his PhD right now at UMS, working on a health systems PhD. He's a brilliant programmer and coder, and he's very committed to making it work. He's worked so many hours, I know, and he's very committed to making everything work out as seamlessly as possible. So one of the things that he's doing to make that dashboard work is the health department, there's basically 4 databases that are feeding into that dashboard. Now the health department has a lot more from what I understand, but there's 4 main dashboards four main databases that are feeding into that dashboard. And Donald basically has he told me it's like 2,000 lines of code to combine all this information from all these databases, so that he delivers it to our coders and programmers so that we can consume that data and aggregate it at the state and the county level, and also by date. So some of those dashboards, some of those databases like EM Resources, like I mentioned, Red Cat, and then one that they built, and then also a COVID portal. So, one of the databases, provides information about, hospitals and how they're doing. And then, the other ones mostly deal with testing results, and positive and negative. And it's been really complicated trying to understand, for me at least, when a test is positive or negative, and which database it goes to, and does a negative test get added to the if the same person gets tested twice, and there's all these sort of factors that go into this this dashboard that they've really had to work out. So it really, one of the really neat things about it is that from our work with the health department, they're actually going to be hiring a GIS person, and we're really grateful for that because, GIS is still a thing that I think a lot of people know about, and they've really grown to see the value of it. And Donald, we've been able to take a load off of Donald, for helping him with that. And so we look forward to handing that over to their new GIS person. And another interesting thing, the health department, I've been really impressed with their data and their databases and the way they handle everything. It's amazing. A lot of it is it's very secure. We've had to be very careful about how we report, because Arkansas has been very keen on making sure we don't skirt any HIPAA laws. And so, as it was explained to me by Donald, there's so much data in their database, and it takes a lot to get to it. So I'm not trying to be scary or anything. But it's just amazing. And so Arkansas, it's just sort of another sort of example, I think, that, Arkansas kind of is a diamond in the rough as far as, technology goes. I mean, just from an example of what, you guys have been up to for a very long time. And you wouldn't guess it, because a state like Arkansas is very rural, but you wouldn't guess that we're really quite advanced in a lot of our systems. We haven't had to rely on the CDC for COVID data like a lot of other states do. The state has really, invested in data, and I'm very proud to be, involved in that effort. And another cool thing that's going on at the health department, and I don't know if it's because of this or if it's something that they were working on prior to COVID, but soon they'll be entering into a contract with a company called Conduit, where all of their databases over the next 3 to 5 years will be combined into one database. And I sort of made a joke to Donald, like, well, so far you've kind of been the conduit, so there's going to be an actual conduit. And he's really excited about that. It's going to be a while, but he's really excited about that. But we continue to support the health department. In fact, today I had to change one of Pulaski County. So in our testing, like if you go to like the testing tab, the current positive cases tab on the dashboard, that's one that we have to monitor a lot, because the data is moving and numbers are increasing. And when you set up a symbology on a map, you have to make sure that some of those counties don't go past the upper limit. And unfortunately, I noticed today that Pulaski County went above our upper limit in the positive, the current active cases. So we have to keep watching it and try to communicate to the public why the colors change from time to time on these maps, because as this is changing, we have to change the colors. I mean, we look forward to the time where we can change the scale back down for all the current active cases. But we're really, despite everything, we're really proud to be part of that, and happy that we could help. And if for anything, just to sort of, advocate for, geographic information systems. Everything can be mapped, and there's no better way really to convey information than a map. I mean, charts and graphs too. Data visualization in general is the best way to communicate, and maps are probably one of the most, the best ways to do that. And so, in closing, I guess I'd just like to reiterate that we spent a lot of time talking to Donald, and Donald spent talking to the doctors at the health department. We've spent a lot of time talking to other states and other, GIS state departments, and with the private industry, like Esri, and they were super helpful with, how to make things the best they can be. And so, and we had to break down a lot of our own silos. I had to leave my comfort zone because my main work at the GIS office is mostly concerned with borders and address points and center lines and working with the census. And so we all had to, pick up and learn as much as we could about everything that, we might be asked to do. And it was because of our, and everyone on board getting together and communicating and collaborating and talking and always being open to learning, always, no matter, young and old students, you're a student forever. That would be my personal, anecdote for anyone listening. And so you guys, thank you so much for having me. I hope you all stay healthy and safe. And I'll be listening tomorrow to the presentations. I'm really looking forward to it. I've recognized a lot of the names on y'all's list, and I'm looking forward to learning more about what you guys are up to. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate your remarks, and I understand what you all have been through. I know that all that kind of data aggregation is really an interesting challenge for everyone. So what I've been hearing, in addition to
I was a late one. I had technology problems, but I made it through.
Oh, okay. Who have we got?
And this is Tony, Anthony.
Oh, you're there. Okay, great.
I'm here.
Tony. Okay, good deal. So we just finished with our guest speaker, Jennifer, and the way the program is going to go from now on, if Matt tells me we're good to go, I keep hearing the doorbell, so I don't know if everybody's been admitted. What do you think?
Well, everybody that has clicked on it has gotten in.
Okay.
It's the finding it and clicking on it that I think hung some people up.
That's all right. Well, if everybody else is ready, then I sure am ready to go ahead and start our induction ceremony. So the way we're going to try to do this is that myself and John Chamberlain and Matt Dozier, our Zoom master, Matt, I want to thank you so much for helping and coordinating this meeting. The three of us are going to sort of tag team it. I'll provide a few introductions, and then Matt and John will give some remarks about each inductee, and then we will ask you all to pretend like you're walking up to the podium, and then you're going to show us your award. And we would normally shake hands and have a photo up. So we're just going to pretend like we're doing that, right? What I'm eating that he does so well for us each year. And a little context about me and John. John, I first met in 1986 when I wrote a letter to Arkansas Systems after I read about them in the newspaper, in the Democrat Gazette. I wrote a letter to Arkansas Systems trying to talk myself into a job. And John talked James Hendren into hiring me. So that was a really wonderful connection there. And then our paths, John and James and Eugene and mine and Karen Halbert, if she's here, paths have crossed constantly over the years, and I'm just really grateful for John's friendship and mentorship, and all of you all who have been in this field with me ever since. And tonight we're joined by some of our inaugural members of the first class of 2006, and I think Eugene said about 48 others who have joined over time, and our new inductees, 11 new ones and one from 2019. And so John, let me ask you to give that Arkansas Academy of Computing context for us. I'm going to find you and spotlight you.
All right. Well, as Susan said, this is the 15th induction. The Academy of Computing had its first induction in 2006.
There you are. Oh, it says John's bandwidth is low. Darn.
We can hear
John,
him.
I
Can you
think
hear me?
yeah, maybe we might have to do without your video and so that we can hear you.
Let's do that.
Okie doke.
That better?
Very good.
We can
Yes.
see it now. We can see it now.
Yeah, we got your picture. So go ahead and tell us about what you were going to tell us.
Okay, well, the Academy of Computing has been around now since 2006. Every year we induct about 10 people who have strong Arkansas connections, either through their work or their birth and education, and have a career in computing that is at least 20 years long. 20 years is not in the history of computing a long time, and computing connections begin early in Arkansas. So we've had inductees whose careers began in the 1950s. A couple examples of those are Regine Montague. From that point, computers spread around Arkansas, and by the late 1960s, you had this pattern of computing in many, many fields. Those fields included agriculture, especially the broiler industry, and financial technology, where we had startups that began in Arkansas and reached out and conquered the banking world. We also had computing and medical technology and educational technology. The migrant students database and network that was started in the late 60s had terminals in 48 states at the same time that ARPANET was in 4. So a lot of pieces of history, a lot of interesting things that people have done. So now we have members inducted that were born in the 1990s, and some of them began computing careers as teens and are working in fields that were not yet invented when they were born. The word computing in the Academy's name was well chosen. We are not the Academy of Computer Science or Data Science. It's computing in general that makes Arkansas interesting and important. We seem to have a talent for applying hardware, software, and data to solve a wide variety of problems, and that's what our computing heritage is built on. We've also had a history of people that tried new things, created new organizations. And as Susan said, we have members from many disciplines who have applied computing technology in varied ways. And our inductees this year illustrate that breadth and depth of computing in Arkansas.
Begin our induction ceremony. And again, I'm going to ask for everybody's patience as we, Matt will put up the slides show and we'll go through the inductees alphabetically. As he does that, I'm sorry?
I said, we hope.
We hope. As Matt does that, then he will bring the screen down and then I'll find you on the Zoom and put a spotlight on you, and hopefully you're there and you've got your award and you can show it to everybody, and then we'll give you a round of applause.
Susan, Don is currently the Assistant Commissioner of Research and Technology at the Arkansas Department of Education and all the other letters that are associated with that these days. But perhaps he's best known as the person who developed the Hot Springs Technology Institute into the premier educational technology conference, and then the inspiration for so many that have followed it. Don has been an ed tech leader from the beginning of his career. He helped the Hot Springs School District transform its offerings in technology. He developed the Henderson State MSc in Ed Tech Leadership. And then that wasn't enough. He went and built the online version of that for Henderson State University. He has received numerous awards for his work, and I am proud to introduce you to Mr. Don Benton. Susan?
Thank you. Let me find Don so I can spotlight. And everyone, here's Don. Have you? Thank you so much.
Quite an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Susan Bristow, and John will say a few words about Susan.
Dr. Susan Bristow has had a distinguished career at the University of Arkansas, and she's well known to the Academy because she's been our main Academy contact with the Walton College Information Systems program. She's many things in her history and resume, but there's one word that stands out in everything that Susan has done, and that word is students. She has taught, advised, and mentored students excellently, and winning many awards for these activities. She's done this important work at the secondary level, as well as through the university, because she works with high school programs, and she helps in computing. I'd like to present Susan Bristow for membership.
Thank you, John. I will find you, Susan, and thank you for joining us. All right, thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Jackson Cothran, and I believe Matt Dozier will do the introductions for Dr. Cothran.
Well, Dr. Jackson Cothran is the director of the Center for Advanced Spatial Technologies and the Advanced Research Computing Collaborative at the UA. Jack is the second director of a cast to join our academy. He specializes in work in geospatial sciences and photogrammetry. On a personal note, he has been an instrumental supporter of the East Initiative since the late 1990s. He's been a principal or co-principal investigator in projects from private sources and agencies, including the Department of Defense, NASA, the Department of the Interior, the National Science Foundation, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security. Good grief, Jack, want to achieve something? He is also the author of over 120 publications and presentations, and he's an all-around great guy. Susan, I present to you Dr. Jack Cothran.
All right, let me grab Jack and find, there you are. All right.
Thank you,
Hey, Jack, thank you for joining us.
I'm honored to be here.
Great. Can't wait to hear more from you. I believe we've got you and one of yours on the agenda tomorrow. Very good. All right. Next up, we have Alan Garner, and I know John is going to give some remarks about Alan.
Alan's career follows a path that many follow, and you get a technical degree. And then when you go to apply it, you have to acquire in-depth experience in a certain application area. For Alan, that area is healthcare. He's worked with several academic healthcare systems and with multiple healthcare IT service companies. He's also been extremely active in standards development organizations and his actions. Moving on in his career, Alan has crossed the Rubicon that separates technical management from corporate management, and he now is the CEO of RX Results, a company that uses Arkansas developed technology in managing prescription drug programs.
All right.
Susan, I present Alan Gardner.
Thank you. Alan, I know you're here. There you are. Welcome, Alan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey.
What an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have Mr. Greg Holland, and Matt will say a few words of introduction for Greg Holland.
Dr. Greg Holland is the Director of Research at the Arkansas Research Center at the University of Central Arkansas. He's best known for his work as the architect of the Arkansas 2009 statewide longitudinal data system. Since 2016, Greg has served as the director of ARC. Prior to this, he spent 10 years at Axiom Corporation. That's a small company, I believe, based in Conway, Jerry, serving in various roles. Fun fact, Greg served on the authorship team for the Information Quality Certified Professional Exam. And now he can add the Arkansas Academy of Computing to the list of people that think he's awfully cool. Susan?
Thank you. And Greg, we really appreciate you joining the Academy. Hi, welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Go. Very nice. All right. Next up Zhishuan Huang. And Zhishuan, you will be welcomed by John Chamberlain to say remarks.
Okay. Dr. Huang is a professor of bioinformatics and biomedical informatics at Arkansas State University. She's particularly noted for conceiving of the concept of no boundary thinking, that is, using bioinformatics, advanced data science, and artificial intelligence to work on problems at the boundaries of traditional academic and professional disciplines. She currently heads the Center for No Boundary Thinking at Arkansas State University and is an Arkansas Vermet. She, through various appointments, supports programs at UA Fayetteville in agriculture, at UA Little Rock and UAMS and bioinformatics and related areas, and applies her expertise to problems at all these institutions. I really hope we can hear from her in a future program. Susan, I'd like to present Dr. Huang.
Thank you. Dr. Huang, welcome to the Academy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I took just a little bit of time meeting her to realize she's also one of the smartest people I've ever met. She's the current Deputy Chief Data Officer for the state of Arkansas. She's led a number of initiatives, including the State Data Transparency Panel and the work that led to the creation of the State Longitudinal Data System. Adita created the role of agency data officers and the Cross-Agency Data Governance Steering Committee. She's helped to connect data to problem solving for so many state agencies and coordinated with the private sector to make sure that all of those pieces were fitting together.
All right, let me find Adita. And we just had a new somebody come in. I'm gonna find you, Adita. Where are you? Well, I know you're here. There you are. Sorry. Okay, welcome, Adita. Great. I love your background too. Thank you for joining us.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Paneer Selvam, and I believe John will say a few words. Introduce Dr. Selvam. John?
Hey, Paneer is someone that I have worked with and have great respect for. He's a university professor at UA Fayetteville and holds the James T. Womble Chair for Computational Mechanics and Nanotechnology Modeling. I should mention that Jim Womble, that chair is named for, is a charter member of the Academy.
Yeah.
Paneer has spent several decades doing modeling and working with applying computing to problems in civil engineering. He was a pioneer in using computers to model weather patterns, and he continues his work in modeling today in new fields, including energy storage and nanoparticles. Perhaps particularly important to Arkansas is his work in modeling tornadoes. His work has won him not just one, but 5 U of A Outstanding Researcher Awards. As I said, he's a member of the Arkansas Academy of Science, also has been on their board, and has generally been recognized for his leadership in science in Arkansas. Susan, I'd like to present Dr. Selvam.
Thank you, John, and welcome, Dr. Selvam. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Scott Spradley. Matt?
Susan, can we back up? Because I
Oh,
told you
I'm so
that
sorry,
Alpha,
we missed
Susan.
it for us.
I'd be happy to introduce Arijit. Arijit Sarkar is the Chief Information Officer and the Director of Information Systems at the Arkansas Department of Education. He's the key architect for Arkansas's educational longitudinal data system. He's been recognized at the Masters of Information Quality program. And on a personal note, for the last several years, he's the first person I write at the change of the fiscal year because he makes sure East keeps on going. Arijit, welcome to the Academy, sir.
Okay, I will find Arijit. I'm looking for you, Arijit.
Over $100 billion company he helped create. He holds leadership roles at he has held leadership roles at Chevron and Intel. He was originally on the Arkansas Center for Data Sciences Advisory Board and at the University of Arkansas as a board member, or as a member of the Board of Trustees for the National World War II Museum. Fun fact for Scott, it is shockingly easy to misspell Spradley, something I learned the hard way and something I have yet to quit being embarrassed about. But Scott, I am so glad you've joined our group.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm digital, so I have the digital trophy here.
Oh, that's right. I'm looking for you. Hang on. Where we go. All right. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Thank
All
you very
right.
much.
Appreciate you joining us. Looking forward to getting to know. Oh, good deal.
It's all digital, baby.
Yeah. The new one should arrive any moment.
Maybe as we speak.
No.
Someone that I had the pleasure of working with for 6 years. We have a lot of Academy members in the fintech industry, and often we've had multiple inductees. This year, Tony Warren stands alone as a strong fintech representative. I think we've got the slide wrong.
Yeah, I'm
John.
sorry.
Driving.
Yeah, Matt. Nope.
Back.
There we go. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, there's. So Tony began his career at Arkansas Systems, what is now Euronet Worldwide, as a program analyst, and through 25 years steadily moved up. So he's now the president of Euronet Software Services and the managing director. He's in charge of 150 people that work developing and supporting banking applications for clients in over 60 countries, of technical knowledge and people skills that are required to maintain employee and customer satisfaction. He supports both a mature product line and a newer technology replacement that supports an even wider range of financial applications. Tony manages people and projects on 3 continents at least, and is currently surmounting the challenges of doing international installations without traveling to the customer site.
You real quick. I'm glad you were able to get it in, and there you are. Great. Welcome,
Thank you.
Tony. Thank you for being with us. An inductee that was unable to join us last year, but we're very happy that he is able to make it tonight. And I would ask John Chamberlain to say.
He's an anthropologist. And when I called him to tell him of his nomination, he said something like, "Computing is what I do, computing." And then he answered his own question. Well, it's data and algorithms, and data and algorithms used very creatively and uniquely. Peter developed the idea of doing 3D scans of fossil teeth and then importing that data into essentially geospatial software, creating a digital topo map of the teeth. And from this, he developed algorithms to analyze and categorize the marks on those teeth produced by the written popular articles in Scientific American and written some popular books on teeth. His work shows that whatever the field of study.
Thank you, John. Let me find you, Peter. And I'm sure we'll have you. There you are. So you all, what an impressive class of 2020 and 2019 with Peter. But the class of 2020 is the celebration possibly be to be a part of this academy. And I just want to welcome everyone, and then we continue to grow in breadth and depth. It's going to be with us forever. And what I love is looking for the new ways that we can celebrate those of you who make a difference in computing in Arkansas in each of your Peter's been on the screen long enough. He probably wishes we weren't looking at him right now. But Matt, do you have the interim slide that we might put up just while we introduce what's coming next?
Is Gary coming up? We're going to have a production meeting. Everybody ignore this.
Yeah, this is comments, but Kim, if you would please say a few words about Gary. Good. Kim.
What are you talking about in the chat?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Gary.
I have to say, Susan, I don't need an introduction.
Well, anyway, for those who might not.
Right. Thanks, Susan.
Excuse me
That's
one
great.
second, Gary. And Matt, if you could mute
So you can
all so we could hear
cash
Gary.
or put it on your card.
I'm going to use it on my card.
Excuse us just a second, Gary. Okay, please. Gary,
All right.
thank you for providing.
In Canada and Mexico, as well as in its small offices in Asia. 440 of those locations, 17,000 plus tractors, including a number that are electric, being tested today. 121 plus thousand trailing units. We use not only our own assets, is 9.2 billion as of last year. What might surprise you is intermodal. So this was a back of the napkin deal Mr. Hunt did with earnings, and we are the world's largest company-owned container and chassis fleet. Every single one of those intermodal trailers has a solar panel. So the largest dedicated fleet in North America. And so this is a case where customers don't want to be in the business of fleet management, and they outsource the entire service to us. Are really the cash cows, and the other businesses are more what you call in startup mode and growing fast. And in fact, the fastest growing business within our unit, or even got a Whirlpool washer and dryer, delivered and installed inside your house, chances are that was a JB Hunt employee doing that work for you. And then, of course, truck. Everybody knows truck. You see our trucks on the road. It's actually our smallest business. It is profitable, and it's what created the rest of this organization. And I think we'll cross the 2 billion run rate fairly soon. All right, so that was JB Hunt. So we're gonna talk about cloud computing. So what I wanted to share is just a little bit of setup, and then just some quick slides of what we did and lessons learned from that perspective. And so McKinsey just came out with an article this month talking about the historical prediction of cloud computing was expected to be, say, 16% of enterprises' workloads would be run in the cloud. And the reality is that we're somewhere around 9%. And there's a number of reasons why that's the case, and we'll talk about some of those today. On the right are really the top three cloud providers. So not surprising, Amazon in the gold brown, AWS is by far the largest cloud service provider. Microsoft, their cloud offering is in the dark green. The light green comes from Office 365, Dynamics, and some other things that they use certainly to inflate, but that's those real revenue coming from those channels. But Microsoft's definitely in the number 2 player in the cloud space, growing exponentially. And then third, of course, is Google Cloud, known as GCP. And certainly Google has put a lot of emphasis on enterprise customers, including Tyson is one of their customers running their BigQuery and their analytics in the Google Cloud. And so why would you move to a cloud? There's lots of good reasons. Obviously, on the left side is probably the worst, and on the right, the best. You don't do this to save money. You do this to increase your resiliency, your scalability, get closer to your customers with compute, access new technologies, and become more agile. And we'll emphasize some of these as we go through with respect to JB Hunt. And so, the way to think about it, I think probably everybody on this call understands cloud computing, but just to go through it quick, if you start on the right side, you shift responsibilities to the cloud service provider. So IaaS, or infrastructure as a service, they provide the data center, they provide the local and physical networking, and to the internet, they provide hosting, but you still have to configure, maintain your operating systems and all the way up the company. You have to manage as much of the systems and applications as you would otherwise. There's this thing called SQL Server PaaS. And then just because it's, in the dinner time space, so let's use pizza as a service is another way to explain it. And so, if I was, on-prem, made at home, I would have to supply everything to make my pizza, from my dining room table to the oven, to the pizza dough, to the sauce, cheese, and hopefully some sausage and some other things there. But if I wanted to use infrastructure as a service, I get some of that done for me. So maybe everything for you. And so what did we do? And first I'll give you some context. So this is at present, we've selected Microsoft Azure as our cloud computing environment. Our CIO, Stuart Scott, came from Microsoft and obviously has an affinity there, but it was a fit. JB Hunt 360, which is our e-commerce platform, and our new core operating system, which we're in the process of releasing, are all that's changing the world of cloud. 43 clusters probably doesn't mean anything to you unless you're a nerd. But what should mean something to you is that we run about 1.5 billion database calls a day, 15 million EDI API transactions per day, supporting anywhere between 30 and 50,000 loads that we move for our customers on a given day. And so we started our journey around 2016. If Tracy were on the call or Jay Davidson, there were probably lots of starts and stops from probably 2008, 10, certainly 12 to 16, make that thing sing and dance. And with the launch of our e-commerce program, JB Hunt 360, we knew we wanted to be in the cloud. And so that was our aspiration. So, on the checklist for 360, really what we were after is the ability to scale, because we had as a company, we moved to Agile right at this juncture. And so being Agile was critical, because you have not only traditional players in our space, but also Uber Freight, Convoy, that's backed by Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and others. There is a lot of competition in the space. So as a monolith, is that you'd had one particular function or thing that you'd want to do. So let's say like an e-commerce site, and you would put it all together in one monolith. Microservices would allow you to break that up. So I could have my product and my product details as a set of microservices, my search engine, my shopping cart, my payment processing, all those are one or many microservices. And the benefit of that is that load and scale varies by these services. So breaking them up, you can apply compute or horsepower to the right services at the right time. The other benefit is to keep them loosely coupled. So if something goes down, you can still roll. Storing configurations in environments. So you have to completely isolate the variables, and your paths have to be abstracted and cannot be in the code. You separate your build run stages. You make sure the apps have the ability to be stateless, and a number of things. The next piece we did was around a tool set. So on this affinity loop, if you start from code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor, which is part of GitHub, is a big part of that. That's where our source code is stored at. It's how we do our releases and our builds and our pipeline. You don't just go from A to B and flip a switch and now 100% of your users are now using a new piece of functionality. There's actually a couple of ways you can do that. One, and geographically scale that service as you have confidence it's working. The other capability is what's called a feature flag, is that now I can release to production, have my feature flag on and off by feature flags, which gives us a very controlled environment to release new things into our production system. It also allows you to do A/B testing to get feedback on which feature works best before you deploy to the rest of your audience. And then, so for us, VMs, so just on virtual servers, before we started doing load testing and getting comfortable with it before we actually turned it live into production. And then later, and so it became a bottleneck, and also it limited our ability to negotiate our rates. And so obviously we had to have at least a couple of redundant feeds for the internet, but it did limit what we could do. And so what we have today is really, it's a fiber ring, and we co-located into two core centers called Equinox in Chicago and Dallas. And that was important because this is also where Microsoft plugs into the internet as well, fully redundant. And then the key things we did is now most of our cloud apps are running in what's called East, which is weird. Lightning, damage, or something happens to one of those facilities. The others are all connected by fiber with redundancy, but they immediately take over the workloads, not only from a compute, from a storage, and we don't have to do anything. So it's fault tolerance and redundancy within a geographic location. And it gives you on all the services and processes and databases that are interconnected, and then color codes them to where you are beginning to have problems or where you do have problems. And so it allows you to go in and triage. And so there's a lot of different ways to do this, but that was one of the better tools. And a server was dedicated to a particular function. And then if you needed a new function, you bought another server. But as servers grew in computing power of Moore's law, you began using software, your memory and storage, and just has some overhead. And so along came a container model called Docker, and there's our workload over to Google Cloud, and the application wouldn't have to be touched. I would have to change some environment configuration set. Is whatever I build and get in dev is the exact same application that makes its way to test, and the exact same application that gets to prod. And it has the ability, JB Hunt Carrier 360. So this is the carrier side of our e-commerce system. And so at 8 a.m., we were averaging about, and then it's typical on a Monday morning, we get a lot of traffic and load. And so this one's not as bad as what we usually see sometimes, but it tells a story for JB Hunt, because we don't have to build a church for Easter Sunday, right? We run and set up our pods for kind of a nominal load. And then the Kubernetes system allows it to automatically scale based on need. And so this allows us to be efficient in our compute, so we're not consuming unused or unwanted compute and storage. And so with respect to the machine learning models, Redis Cache, Cosmo database, which is a non-SQL database, our Event Hub, and our messaging system from that journey or from that experience. Number one, if you're an astute architect, you might say we'd absolutely start with an API first mindset. We started more of a lift and shift mindset, and then APIs came along, VM, and it's a bit redundant when you're in the cloud. So there's overhead that goes with Java, and it's not cloud native with something like Rust or Go. I've got to plan ahead and make sure I have enough idle of those services running, because I can't go to infinity if if everything is taking 6 or 10 seconds to go. This is a very sophisticated application tool that helps us monitor our applications down at that microservice level. Extra Hop for networking, Grafana for Kubernetes. And then, so you may ask, Walter White, is the cloud expensive? It's not necessarily the ability to scale and really grow our business without actually having to add more FTEs to support that additional capacity. 2 people on our security team. And obviously with the cyber threats that impact all large companies and universities and colleges, we have a much bigger team, much more sophisticated way we use the cloud. And then we take advantage of the Sage at Microsoft to help us be smarter and more protective.
I think you touched on just about absolutely every aspect of enterprise architecture that I could even imagine, and about 10 times more than I really am quite impressed actually by the tool sets and the presentation of all that much information. So clinking our glasses and getting back to the table and enjoying each other's company in a warm way. This again, and say thank you all. Thank you so much. Thanks to our new inductees. Thank you, Jennifer, for your opening comments, and Gary for your closing comments. Busy schedule, and you still come out and you get together and you helped move computing forward in Arkansas as a group for the Arkansas Academy of Computing and the students in Arkansas. Thank you so much. Thank you, David.